Well, it's important to remember that Stop the War Coalition was set up to oppose the war in Afghanistan, not just the war in Iraq. And we see all of the wars in the Middle East as connected, from Palestine all the way to Pakistan. This is a kind of arc of instability that the United States under George Bush has created, and which continues under Obama and under Gordon Brown. So it's important for Stop the War, not just because we started campaigning on Afghanistan, but because the families of those troops who've been killed are grieving, because there are grieving families also in Afghanistan, and this will continue so long as people choose to ignore it and the government chooses to support it.
I think the recent casualties of British soldiers in Afghanistan is a direct result of some of the civilian casualties, the high civilian death toll in Afghanistan.
I think there's no doubt that the Taliban gains support every time Britain or America drops a Hellfire missile on a house or on a village. There have been a few incidents recently, and that would have indicated to people, and it did indicate to many military analysts, that the Taliban would step up their attacks now because they've got the popular support to do it, and because the occupation is so discredited at the minute. So, I mean, what we say is, if you want to do something to help the Afghan people, stop dropping bombs on their villages and start paying reparations for the damage that we've caused, not just during this war, but due to the fact that we armed we flooded the country with arms during the Russian invasion in the 1980s. Britain, America, and to a lesser extent Europe are also responsible for that carnage. We've got a lot to answer for in Afghanistan, and we should stop the bombing and start the aid.
Stop the War's position. The UK is hurting both with the loss of its soldiers and also heavily financially. Can you tell us a little bit more about that loss?
Yeah, I think one of the things that raises the issue of the war and sharpens it in people's minds is the fact that we're cutting back on jobs. There's talk of a 10% budget cut across every department except the military. Why then are we fighting a war in which most British people don't want to fight it, and most Afghan people don't want us fighting it? It seems to beg our belief. We know how much the wars cost America because they count the cost. But in Britain they hide the cost quite carefully by not releasing figures, but we know anecdotally that it costs hundreds of millions of pounds each year. And if they want to, I mean, one of the ways they're saving money is by reducing the body armour and the protection that the troops have when they're out there, at the same time as spending $76 billion on a replacement for Trident. So quite clearly the government have got their priorities mixed up, and even the army have noticed this now and are saying scrap Trident, some saying bring the troops home from Afghanistan, and let's stop fighting wars that we can't afford and that people don't want us to fight.
What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it?
Well, in a couple of days, next week in fact, Malalaya Joya, one of the youngest MPs and the youngest female MP in the Afghan Parliament, will come to Britain to launch her book, and her book talks exactly about that, about how she was born days after the Russian invasion, about how the Russian invasion promised to educate women and to raise their status in Afghan society. That failed and ended up with the rule of the Taliban, and now we've gone in and there's a few facts are necessary here to illustrate. One is that 70% of the country is now under the control of the Taliban. So that means that for many of the people in Afghanistan, the Taliban are a reality now as they were before Britain arrived and America arrived. So the honest truth about Afghanistan is that we're not even defeating the Taliban, we're strengthening them. And the longer we stay, the more legitimacy we give the Taliban, and the more likely the Taliban are to come to power after we leave. The best thing that we can do for the Afghans now is try and find a negotiated settlement, a settlement that does the best that we possibly can for the people of Afghanistan, and one that allows us to start rebuilding the country, or allows Afghans to start rebuilding the country with support from us.
Now is the Labour government, and this is the war government. That's how we got to try.